You won't believe what a single dollar can buy out here. Not lunch, not coffee, but a 100-acre ranch baked beneath the western sun, barbed wire stretching like tired veins across the plains, a sagging house crouched against the wind, and a promise so cheap it should have been a warning. Because what Nolan Cassidy bought wasn't just land. It was a secret, a loaded one. And 3 hours after signing the deed, he realized the dollar might just get him killed. If you think this is a story about property, stick around. Because buried beneath that porch, beneath dry soil and forgotten years, is a truth soaked in blood and betrayal. And in just a moment, you'll find out why no one walks into that house without bringing the past with them. Nolan dropped his worn leather satchel onto the sun-bleached steps. Sweat traced down his spine, not just from the desert heat, but from a feeling he couldn't name. The kind of quiet that feels too deliberate, too expectant. He turned the doorknob. Click! The wood groaned under his boots as he stepped inside. Dust hung in the air like ghosts, and then he heard it. Footsteps. Upstairs. Slow. Careful. Deliberate. Not wind, not rodents. A person. He froze, one hand still on the doorknob, his heart pounding like war drums. Just this morning, Boone Carter, the slick-talking clerk with shifty eyes, had slapped a deed on the table and said, "Ain't nobody been up there in years, all yours." But now, from the top of the stairs, a woman's voice floated down. Calm, unafraid, tired. "You must be the new owner." She stepped into view, young dark-haired eyes, like someone who'd seen too much and trusted too little. Her dress was threadbare, her voice steady. "I'm Iris Quaid. I've been taking care of this place." Nolan didn't speak. Couldn't. Because deep down, something told him this didn't start today. And it damn sure wouldn't end quietly. The coin was old, worn smooth by time, its edges dulled like something that had passed too many hands. When Nolan Cassidy slid it across the land office desk that morning, it made the soft clink of a bullet casing settling in a chamber. Final. Inevitable. Boone Carter laughed when he picked it up. "Best deal in the territory," he said, grinning like a fox in a henhouse. $1 for 100 acres. And not just any land, son. This here's Cassidy Ranch now. His eyes, sharp and flickering, didn't match the easy tone of his voice. No strings. Just history. Old bones. Weathered fences. Ain't been lived in for years. All yours. Nolan didn't answer. He just nodded, signed, and walked out with the deed in his hand, and a strange pressure sitting just behind his ribs. That was 6 hours ago. And now he stood at the edge of it. His land. Dry wind tugging at the hem of his coat. Fences like broken ribs stretched out across yellow earth. The main house loomed ahead, tilted, faded, and stubbornly still standing. It looked forgotten, but not empty. The wind carried the scent of old wood rust and the faintest trace of something floral. Not wildflowers, something older, like perfume long since worn away. He crossed the yard, slow boots, crunching gravel each step, loud in the silence. The screen door banged once in the wind, like it was calling him in. The porch groaned beneath his weight. Dust coated everything. The handle was brass-spotted with age. He turned it. The door creaked open with the slow resistance of a secret. Inside, the house held its breath. Shadows stretched across the floor like scars. The light filtering through cracked windows painted the walls in gold and rot. A wooden chair sat overturned in the corner. The wallpaper was peeling in long curls, exposing pale boards beneath like old skin. Nolan stepped inside, every movement sending echoes up the stairs. That's when he heard it. A creak. Faint. Upstairs. He froze. Breath caught, heart in his throat. Then another step. Slow, careful. Not wind. Someone was up there. The brass doorknob still warm in his grip, he scanned the room, fingers twitching toward the knife at his belt. The land was supposed to be empty. Carter had sworn it. Sworn on his mama's grave, even. Ain't nobody been in that house since the war. Nolan didn't move, didn't call out. Then she appeared. At the top of the staircase, barefoot, standing like a ghost between shadow and sun. Young. Dark hair falling like silk over her shoulders. Eyes steady. No fear, only resignation. like she'd been waiting for him. "You must be the new owner," she said softly. And that's when Nolan knew the price of this land wasn't $1. It was everything that came with it. She didn't flinch, didn't scream, didn't run. She just stood there, one hand resting lightly on the stair rail, the other hanging loose at her side like it had nowhere else to go. The late light spilled across her face, turning dust motes into fireflies. And in her eyes, nothing but calm. Nolan stared back, pulse drumming loud in his ears. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, voice low like sound might shatter the moment. She tilted her head, just slightly. "Neither are you." It wasn't a threat, wasn't even anger. It was fact, like the wind or the sky, inevitable. "I'm Iris Quaid," she said after a pause. "I've been here 3 years. This house," she looked around slowly, "hasn't been empty since the day it saved my life." Her voice was soft, sanded smooth by time and solitude. It carried something heavier than fear, something like memory. Nolan didn't lower his guard. Not yet. "Carter said this place was abandoned." She smiled faintly, sad. "Boone Carter doesn't know everything. Or maybe he knows too much and talks too little. Either way, he left out a few things." She began walking down the stairs, barefoot, each step measured like she was afraid the wood might betray her. Or maybe she was just used to moving quiet, like someone who learned long ago that noise draws attention, and attention gets people killed. Nolan stayed still, watching every step. She looked like a ghost in cotton. Her dress was faded, patched at the seams, her skin sun-kissed, not pale. She'd been outside, working, surviving. "I keep the well clean," she said as if reading his thoughts. "The roof don't leak much now. Fences are still holding mostly. This place was dying when I found it. I kept it breathing." She reached the bottom step and paused, just a few feet away now. Her eyes searched his face, not pleading, not defensive, just tired. "You came here with dreams," she said. "I saw it in your face the second you opened that door. A man trying to start over. Maybe build something new." She nodded toward the deed sticking out of his coat. "But you bought more than you think." Silence wrapped the room like old wallpaper, thin, clinging, impossible to peel off without tearing something. Nolan finally spoke. Finally, "Why are you really here?" Iris looked toward the window. The sky outside was bleeding orange, the kind of color that makes you feel like something's about to end. Or begin. Because some things, she whispered, won't stay buried. Not forever. And in that moment, Nolan knew 2 things. This woman had secrets deep as the canyons, and someone somewhere was still looking for her. Nolan followed her gaze to the window. Beyond the smudged glass, the land stretched endless, silent, innocent. But Iris's voice cut through the stillness like a knife through wet canvas. "My father died for what's under this ground." Nolan didn't speak. He waited. Something about her tone, flat, hollowed out like a wind-carved canyon, warned him not to interrupt. "He was a miner," she said, still watching the horizon. "Not a rich man. Not even a lucky one. Just stubborn and smart. He spent 10 years charting the veins beneath these hills. Knew every twist of quartz. Every shimmer of dust that wasn't just dust." She turned from the window and met his eyes. Hers were darker now. Not with anger, but with history. He found gold. Not flakes, not fool's shine. Real gold. A mother lode that could buy a county. Maybe 2. Nolan's jaw tightened. He looked down at the floor. Beneath these old boards, beneath his boots. How close had he come to stepping on a fortune? He kept quiet. Iris went on. "Didn't trust the big outfits. Said they'd steal it the minute he registered the claim. So he filed the paperwork, but hid the originals. Deed, survey maps. Proof it was all ours." She walked to the fireplace and knelt. The Maddox brothers wanted it. Bad. Claimed he owed them. Showed up with fake papers and sharp lawyers. When that didn't work, she stopped. Her hands balled into fists. "They caused the cave-in," she said. "They killed him. Called it an accident. Nobody questioned them. Too rich, too connected. But I knew. I felt it in my bones." She pulled up a loose floorboard and reached into the dark. When she rose, she held a bundle wrapped in oiled cloth. Her fingers moved gently like she was handling a relic or a wound. "These are the real documents," she said, unwrapping them on the dusty table. "Maps, signatures, coordinates. The truth." Nolan leaned in. The papers smelled of earth and age. The map was hand-drawn with notes in the margins, lines traced across ridges, circles marked sweet spots. It looked less like a survey and more like treasure. "This," he said, almost whispering, "is worth a fortune." She nodded. "And worth killing for." A long silence stretched between them. Nolan stared at the map, then back at Iris. "Why show me this?" "Because I'm tired," she said. "Tired of hiding, of waiting for the sound of hooves in the distance." "You seemed honest. Or at least not cruel." He swallowed hard. "Does anyone else know?" She looked toward the door. "They will soon." The sound came low at first, a distant thrum, like thunder too far to fear. Then it grew, louder, heavier, hoofbeats, 3 of them. Iris was at the window before Nolan could move. She peeled the curtain back with fingers gone white at the knuckles. Outside, dust rose like smoke over the trail. 3 riders, black silhouettes against the dying sun, moving steady, measured, like men who didn't rush because they didn't have to. "They've found me," she said, her voice quiet but brittle. Faster than I expected. Nolan stepped beside her. The riders were now close enough to see the way their coats flapped like vultures' wings. Wide-brimmed hats pulled low, guns hanging easy from their hips. One had a silver spur that caught the light with every stride. Another carried a rifle across his saddle like it was just part of him. The lead rider, he rode too still. Like a man who didn't blink unless he had to. "Recognize them?" Nolan asked. Her reply came sharp. "The one in front is Wade Harper." That name meant nothing to Nolan, but Iris's face told him it should. "He works for the Maddox brothers," she continued. "He's the one they send when they want something done quiet or loud." The riders reined in just short of the house, 50 yards out. Close enough to shoot, far enough not to rush it. Harper dismounted. His boots hit the dirt like thunder. He looked up at the porch, eyes hidden in shadow, but Nolan could feel them land right on him. "Let me handle it," Nolan said. "You sure?" Iris asked. "No," he replied. "But I'm the one holding the deed." He stepped outside. The sun had dropped low, bathing the yard in gold fire. Nolan's boots hit the porch like a line being drawn. Harper smiled when he saw him. A slow, knowing grin. "Evening," he called out. "Beautiful place you've got here." Nolan said nothing. "I take it you're the new owner," Harper continued, walking closer, one hand resting near his holster. "Name's Wade. I'm looking for someone. Might have gone by Iris Quaid. Heard she was squatting here a while." "She's not here," Nolan said. Flat, unblinking. Harper's grin widened, but there was no warmth in it. "Funny. Thought I saw 2 figures through that window just now. My man Johnny's got eyes like an eagle. Don't miss much." The one called Johnny tipped his hat from the saddle. His rifle stayed pointed, casual, but ready. "You've got no business here," Nolan said, stepping down 1 step. "This is private land. I've got the papers if you'd like a look." Harper chuckled. "I bet you do. But we're not much for paperwork. We're here for what was stolen. That girl took something that don't belong to her." Nolan's hand rested near his belt. Not on the handle, just near enough to be noticed. "She took back what was hers," he said. "Now get off my land." Harper's smile faded. "That ain't a wise hill to die on, friend." Nolan didn't blink. "Then don't make me climb it." The standoff hung thick in the air. No birds, no wind. Just breath and bone and powder waiting to burn. The sun dipped lower, bleeding red across the dirt yard. Wade Harper took another step toward the porch. The wood creaked under Nolan's boots as he stood his ground, unarmed, outnumbered, but unshaken. The air between them shimmered with heat and tension. Harper's hand hovered close to his gun, but not enough to draw. Not yet. He was a hunter. He liked to watch his prey squirm first. "You're protecting her," Harper said. "That's noble. Real noble. But nobility don't count for much out here. What she took cost our employer a fortune. We ain't leaving without it?" Nolan's voice was quiet, but it cut like barbed wire. "She took the truth. And if your boss lost money because of that, maybe he shouldn't have buried her father alive. That did it." The grin dropped from Harper's face like a dead man from a noose. For a second, silence. Then Harper's voice, low and deadly. "You know what I think?" He stepped closer. "I think you knew what you were buying. Maybe Miss Quaid promised you a share in exchange for keeping her hidden." Nolan didn't flinch. "I bought this place 6 hours ago. I didn't even know her name until she said it. But now you do." Harper said, eyes narrowing. "And that makes you part of this. You get between us and what's ours, well, that makes you something else entirely." Nolan's fists curled. "It's not yours." Harper nodded to his men. Johnny shifted in his saddle rifle, now aimed clean at the front door. The third man circled slowly to the left, trying to cover the back. They were boxing him in. Tight. Inside, Nolan could feel Iris moving. He hoped she was hiding the documents, or loading a weapon, or praying. Harper stepped up to the first porch step. "Last chance. Call her out. Save yourself some pain." Nolan stared down at him. "You don't get to give orders here." That's when the door creaked open behind him. Iris stepped out, dressed in worn riding gear, a small satchel slung over her shoulder. Her chin was lifted, her eyes hard as riverstone. "That's enough," she said. "He has nothing to do with this." Harper turned toward her, surprise flickering. "There you are," he breathed. "You've been a ghost, darling. We've chased your shadow through 3 territories. I'm tired of running," she said. "You want me? Take me. Just leave him out of it." Nolan turned to her, voice low. "You don't have to do this." "Yes," she said. "I do." She stepped beside him. Not behind, beside. Harper's eyes gleamed. "Where are the papers?" "What papers?" Iris replied flatly. Harper laughed, but it was hollow. "We'll find them. Tear this place down if we have to." Nolan moved between them again. "You'll do no such thing." Harper's gun cleared leather fast as lightning. Barrel pressed cold against Nolan's forehead. "You sure about that?" Harper growled. Nolan didn't blink. His breath shallow, muscles tight. Then hoofbeats. Fast. From the east. Not one. Many. A dust cloud rising. 5 riders moving fast, sun glinting off metal. Harper turned, eyes narrowing. Nolan whispered, "You expecting company?" Harper swore under his breath. The thunder of hooves cracked the silence wide open. Dust boiled up from the eastern trail, and 5 riders burst into view, badges, gleaming coats, flaring like wings. The law had come. And they were riding hard. On the porch, Harper's gun still pressed against Nolan's forehead. But his hand trembled now, just enough for Nolan to feel it. Fear was creeping in. "I told you," Iris said behind him, her voice low, steady. "This land doesn't, and it doesn't forgive." Inside the house, time snapped into motion. She darted through the door boots, flying across worn floorboards. Nolan didn't follow. He stayed where he was, between Harper and the woman he barely knew, but somehow already couldn't let go. Inside, Iris dropped to her knees near the fireplace. Her fingers pried at a loose board, one she'd touched 100 times before, in the darkened silence, with breath held like it might give her away. The wood groaned, lifted. Beneath it, cloth dark with age and oil. She pulled it free, unwrapped it fast. Her breath caught in her throat as the familiar scent hit her old paper-dry leather, the faint ghost of cedar smoke. She cradled the bundle like a child. Maps, survey lines, her father's hand-scrawled notes in the margins. The deed brittle but intact. Every word a nail in the Maddox brothers' coffin. Back outside, Wade Harper's jaw clenched tight as the riders drew closer. He hissed at his man, "Get in there. Find those papers. Now." Johnny hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the approaching badges. Then Sheriff Bennett's voice, loud and clear, "Johnny Marks. If you take one step into that house, you're aiding a wanted man. And I've got a rope with your name on it." Johnny froze. "I ain't dying for you, Wade," he muttered, backing away from the porch. Harper's fury boiled over. "Coward?" Then he turned back just in time to see Iris step through the doorway, bundle in hand. "This is what you came for," she said, holding the cloth-wrapped truth like a blade. Harper's eyes locked on it. Greedy, desperate. "Give it here." But she didn't move. You don't get to bury the truth twice. The sheriff's riders circled now, closing in, guns drawn. One dismounted, another raised a shotgun and leveled it straight at Harper's heart. "Drop it, Wade," Sheriff Bennett barked, "or we'll put you down where you stand." But Harper didn't drop the gun. His eyes flicked between Nolan, the girl, and the documents. His lips curled. Then, with a savage grunt, he shoved Nolan aside and swung the barrel toward Iris. Nolan moved without thinking. A blur. A shout. A single shot. Then 3 more. Harper hit the dirt like a sack of blood and bone. Smoke curled from Bennett's revolver. Silence returned. But this time, it felt like peace. The dust hadn't even settled when the sheriff stepped down from his saddle. His boots hit the ground with a finality that made the moment feel heavier than the sky. Sheriff Eli Bennett, lean, weathered, eyes like canyon stones, seen too much, missed nothing. He walked past Harper's body without slowing, holstered his revolver like he'd done it 1,000 times, because he had. "Is everyone alive?" he asked flatly, scanning the porch. Nolan stood, ribs aching from the shoved dirt on his coat, heartbeat still wild. "We are," he answered. "Thanks to your timing." Bennett nodded once, then turned to Iris. For a second, his tough lawman's face cracked. "Just a little. Miss Quaid, I'm sorry it took this long." Iris swallowed. Her hand still gripped the bundle of documents, knuckles white, but her voice held. "You got my letter, did better," he said. "Got your witness." From behind the line of riders, an old man stepped forward, thin as barbed wire, bent from years, face half-shadowed under a torn hat. Iris gasped. "Pete," the old man nodded. "Saw what they did to your pa, girl. Been running ever since. But it's time I stopped hiding." Her knees almost gave. Nolan caught her elbows, steadying her. Sheriff Bennett turned to his deputies. "Secure the papers. Guard the witness. We ride for the courthouse in the morning." Johnny, the sharpshooter who once aimed at Iris, was now on his knees, hands behind his head, silent as death. The third man had fled into the trees. Bennett had already sent 2 riders after him. The wind picked up again, stirring Harper's coat. The dead man lay twisted in the dust, eyes still open, reaching for a future that was never his. Iris stepped down from the porch, walking slow, shoulders squared. She stood over him, looked down with nothing but quiet. "You hunted me for 3 years," she whispered. "And in the end, you still couldn't outrun the truth." She didn't cry. Not for him. Sheriff Bennett approached Nolan. "You did good. Most men would have stepped aside." Nolan shook his head. "Didn't feel like a choice. That's how you know it was the right one." He tipped his hat. "We'll be back in a week to escort her and testify." "Will she be safe?" Bennett looked toward the horizon. "Not until the Maddox name is carved into a cell door. But this," he gestured to the dead, the bound, the dust still dancing, "this was the beginning of the end." They mounted up, one by one. The sheriff last. As they rode out, the sound of hooves faded into the golden light, and for the first time in years, the ranch was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that hides something, the kind that heals. Pete Harden smelled like wood smoke and silence. He stood by the cold fireplace, hunched but unshaken. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from too many years gripping a shovel and never justice. Nolan poured 2 tin cups of water and handed him one. Pete took it with a nod, eyes fixed on the floor like he could still see something there. No one else could. "I was working my own cut," Pete said at last, voice rough as sandpaper. "Claim upstream. That day was hotter than sin. Birds weren't singing. I should have known then something was wrong." Iris sat at the table, documents spread before her like the pieces of a broken past. She listened without blinking. "I saw 3 of them," Pete went on. "Wade Harper, one of the Maddox boys, and a third man I couldn't place. They went into your father's mine just after noon. Carried tools, but they weren't digging. They were breaking." His jaw clenched. "I watched 'em saw through the supports like it was nothing. Like your father's life wasn't worth a plug nickel." Nolan felt his stomach turn. Iris's fingers pressed against the map, tracing the veins of gold like they were scars. "I ran for help," Pete said. "But by the time I got back, the whole shaft was dust. I dug till my hands bled, but there wasn't nothing left to save. Just silence. And one broken helmet." He finally looked up. Right at Iris. I wanted to speak. Lord knows I did. But I knew what Maddox's money could do. Sheriff Bennett, he tried. But the judge was bought, the papers burned, and I disappeared. A long pause. The fire crackled, though it hadn't been lit. I kept this, he added, pulling a folded slip of paper from inside his vest. Map copy, my own. Didn't know if it mattered. But I knew one day you'd need it. Iris reached for it with both hands. When their fingers touched, something passed between them. Not forgiveness. That takes time. But maybe the beginning of it. Thank you, she whispered. Pete nodded once, then sat back, as if the weight on his shoulders had finally shifted. Nolan looked out the window. The sun was dipping behind the hills. Shadows long and soft. The kind that made the world look new again. We'll ride to the courthouse soon, Iris said, voice firmer now. You'll testify, Pete smiled. I didn't live this long just to die with the truth. Nolan crossed his arms, watching her. She was standing straighter, breathing easier. The haunted look fading? Not gone, but fading. The shot that killed Wade Harper still echoed in Nolan's bones. It had been clean, swift, final. But the silence that followed, that was heavier than the bullet. Now, as night crawled over the ranch like a worn-out blanket, Nolan sat alone on the porch steps, watching the horizon disappear one star at a time. The wood beneath him was warm from the day's heat, but cooling fast. Crickets sang in the tall grass, the kind of sound that used to mean safety. Iris stood behind him, barefoot again, arms crossed tight against the breeze. He was right about one thing, she said. The Maddox brothers won't stop. Nolan didn't look up. Then we don't stop either. She sat beside him, close enough for their shoulders to almost touch, close enough for the silence between them to mean something. I thought killing him would feel like justice, she whispered. But it just feels less quiet. Justice doesn't feel like much, Nolan said, but it gives you space to build something that does. She looked at him now, eyes clearer than they'd been since the moment they met. You didn't have to stand up for me. I didn't do it for you, he replied. That made her blink, till he added, I did it for what's right. Turns out you just happened to be on the same side. That brought the hint of a smile. Just enough to crack the mask she'd worn for years. I'm leaving after the trial, she said softly. Was thinking about New Mexico, maybe California. Nolan nodded, said nothing, but... She paused. Part of me wonders if I've been running so long I forgot how to stand still. He turned then, met her eyes. Then maybe you start with a step. They sat like that for a while. Two people still bleeding, still broken, but not alone anymore. Inside, the fire had finally been lit. Warm light danced across the faded walls. The same room where secrets had once festered now felt like it could hold something else, like a future. She stood first, walked to the doorway, then paused. You never said what you're going to do, she said. I bought this land to build something, he replied. Didn't expect it to start with a bullet and a lie. But I'm not done here. Iris looked at the dark field beyond the house, at the barn, the well, the fences, and then back at him. I'll help, she said. Quiet. Sure. And with that, she stepped inside. Nolan followed the screen door, clicking shut behind him like the close of an old chapter 1 that had bled enough. Morning came slow. Not with fire, not with thunder, just a soft hush over the plains, like the land was exhaling after years of holding its breath. Nolan stepped out onto the porch, hammer in one hand, coffee in the other. The sky was painted in soft golds and pale blues. Dew clung to the fence rails like memory. Inside the house, Iris was humming. Not loud, not even on key, but it was a sound that didn't belong to fear, and that was something. He walked across the yard, boots sinking into damp soil. The old barn leaned like an old man, but it still stood. He ran a hand along its frame. The wood felt warmer now. Behind him, the screen door creaked open. I found the seed box, Iris called. Half of them are still good. We'll need a fence line, he said. Maybe 2. She smiled. Let's start with 1. They worked in silence, but not the same silence as before. This one was filled with purpose, the kind that comes when the worst is over, but the scars are still fresh. They didn't talk about Harper, or Maddox, or the courthouse waiting just over the ridge. Those storms would come, but not today. Today was for rebuilding. By midday, the first new post stood tall. Nolan stepped back, wiped the sweat from his brow, looked at Iris' hair, tied back hands, dirty face lit by sun and stubborn hope. This place, he said, still needs a lot. Yeah, she replied, but so do we. They didn't touch, didn't kiss, just nodded. Because sometimes healing doesn't start with love. It starts with work and the courage to stay put. As the wind blew across the ranch, carrying the scent of wood smoke and fresh soil, Nolan looked toward the distant hills. Trouble might still be out there, but for the first time, he wasn't facing it alone. Maybe this land really was worth $1. Maybe it was worth everything. What would you do if the past knocked on your door with a gun in its hand and gold buried under your feet? Tell us in the comments. Would you stay and fight or run like hell? And if this story stirred something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales where dust, destiny, and defiance collide.